All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things AusX, WSX, and off-season news with Jason Thomas. Firstly, thank you to everyone for listening and supporting the site. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for this one in Fly Racing and Firepower. Starting with Fly Racing, who have recently dropped their 2026 range, which raises the bar once again for performance and design. Built with championship proven technology, the new collection is all about control, comfort, and confidence on any track in any conditions. Leading the charge with the Formula S, the world's first off road smart helmet. It's a game changer and a bold statement of Fly Racing's commitment to innovation. Ready to ride? Check out the full 2026 line at flyracing.com. Check out your local dealers and follow at flyracing.global on social media. Also, a big shout out to Firepower, who are obviously teamed up with many heavy hitters in the industry like Club MX. So be sure to check out all their offerings online and on socials to see why they're so highly regarded as well. All right, welcome JT. How's life? And thanks for joining us again, mate. Been a pretty busy weekend of racing with the WSX and the AusX finale coming up this weekend, mate. So how was your last week? And another busy weekend of action, isn't it?
Yeah, all good. It's holiday week here in the States. So, when this comes out, well, everybody will be in Thanksgiving mode here, which means if you're not racing, WSX or AusX, you're probably taking some time off. So it's kind of a couple of days where, like even like Alden Baker's guys, maybe you'll get like a day off, like they'll still do their training, but this one and then Christmas are really the only kind of down times where people actually like take their brains off of the task at hand for a moment. But otherwise, man, it's everybody's thinking really hard about Anaheim about now.
Yeah, it's certainly all ramping up. It'll come around real fast. And I guess for this weekend, WSX, a lot of heavy hitters from, the stateside series will be racing that. Obviously, you got Deegan, Webb, Anderson, Roczen, Tomac. It's pretty star-studded this weekend for the Aussie fans. And I guess it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in many ways. Nice little precursor before the season. Obviously, what do you expect from guys like Deegan, Webb? How's their prep heading in, mate? Have you got any insights going on there? There'll be lots of storylines to follow this weekend again, won't there?
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this goes. I think that Deegan has made some significant improvements just based off of kind of what I've seen on Instagram and really watching them over and over and over and small subtle things that he not necessarily like he's changing his riding or anything, but you can see the comfort level really improving. And I kind of want to see if that shows up on the racetrack because it's certainly noticeable for me on Instagram. But I think, when you look at, you have, Tomac Webb, Deegan, and Roczen, and I'm sure there are other guys in that, but that's a really solid lineup. And let's see what the weather does. Let's see if we get a true representation here of what happens. But I like that setup to just kind of see where these guys are. Like we have an idea of what most of those guys, who they are, what they're going to do. But you throw a guy like Deegan in there, you throw Tomac in on his new motorcycle, and I think it's one of the few times where maybe we can try to glean something from the off season because typically on a normal basis, I think that's a bad idea is to try to draw conclusions from the off season. But I think in this particular case, it might be one that we can kind of lean into a little bit.
Yeah, and obviously with the Cooper Webb side of things, obviously coming fresh off Paris, he obviously went back, did some training and testing, and then back on a flight to Australia. Sort of how taxing is that sort of schedule for him at the moment, or is he just sort of easing into it, using the racing to get some base as well? So just any insights on his program, because it's quite a unique schedule, I guess, in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's very methodical with these types of things. Like he will look at these races as an opportunity to gauge himself, gauge the motorcycle, but he also knows that he's not in necessarily race form yet. So I think he gives himself a little bit of a break and he understands like, hey, the goal is to not be 100% here, but if I can take these races and learn from them and apply them, whether it's testing, whether it's my body, speed, lack of any of the above, I think he knows that that is something to make sure that he makes the most of. And I think it's just having the right mindset for these races more than anything. If you go into it saying like, I need to be my best, I have to win, anything less than winning is a failure. Like I get it as a competitor, but for these guys, like I know that WSX is their own thing and they're trying to make a go of this thing, but this is not the end all be all goal for these guys. Like, long story short, that's just the truth of the matter. These races, these WSX races are not what they're truly focused on. So I think you just have to keep it in the right frame. And yes, you always want to do your best and you want to try to put your best foot forward. But I think a lot of these guys use it as a testing ground and an opportunity to get better for the following season, as well as, and probably the most important part of it, making a lot of money along the way as well.
Yeah, it's well said. It's yeah, good sort of testing ground, but you don't want to sort of you're obviously not putting all the eggs in that basket. And obviously you're busy with the Husqvarna launch, mate. There's obviously some cool stuff out there on that. Really exciting 450 and 250 team there for 2026, and obviously Mookie fresh off Paris, putting in such an impressive performance, which you commentated on, obviously with Paul in person there, mate. So shaping up pretty nicely for them as well. And I guess is there any sort of insight into how the KTM group is looking, financially with the ownership and all that kind of thing too?
Yeah, you wouldn't really know like anything, behind the scenes financially from speaking with those guys. Malcolm wasn't there because he was already in Paris. So got to speak with RJ. He was kind of just starting to ramp up a little bit for boot camp, and Malcolm was just missing the beginning of it. But I kind of wanted to talk with the other guys, the young guys, a little bit more. Bennett just coming over, he was super excited. I think just kind of for a change in scenery. And remember, he had been a part of the Orange Brigade his entire youth, like his entire amateur career. So that was a little bit of a coming home for him, being back, not necessarily on the same exact team, but back with, the Austrian group and on a bike that feels familiar. That KTM and the Husky, they are obviously super close, and the dynamics of the way that the frameworks and some of the technicians, and there's just a lot of synergy there, even though it's a different team on paper. So I think he was excited about that and to get away from, it hadn't gone really well for him. Like, he got that podium in Tampa, but outside of that, there was a lot of ups and downs. And I think this was kind of a turning the page, and he can kind of get out from under the shadow of guys like Deegan. And there's just a lot of successful guys. Like, think about the team he was on. They had Webb and Tomac and Deegan and like superstar guys. So that's a lot to kind of be in the shadow of, where I think now, right or wrong, I think the way he's looking at it is this is an opportunity to kind of press the reset button a little bit. And we'll see where that goes, right? It doesn't mean it's going to work. I just think I could kind of see the excitement in his eyes a little bit at a different situation than he had been in prior.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's obviously a big season coming up for a lot of these guys, and he's had his fair share of injuries and things, so he'll be ready to rumble for sure. And obviously, there's some pretty cool Prado interview that Weeds just dropped the other day, mate. Really interesting stuff. A lot of good honesty in there. Obviously, not so much talk on the Kawasaki fallout. There's obviously, things in place that's not being spoken about, but he seems really happy again to be back on Orange. I think he said it's 14th season on a KTM, and I guess some of the key takeaways, I guess, where he's just sort of said it's not a revenge tour, this thing. He just wants to, he just likes racing so much, and it's all about winning for him, isn't it, mate? You've seen him race across the globe. He's got that mindset, that confidence. And I guess one of the other key things he said, he feels safe on the KTM. So confidence, momentum, it's all massive for a racer, isn't it, mate? All that stuff. So just feeling as good as possible to perform at your best. So he'll be putting in the hard work in the off season. And with criticism as well, mate, I guess it only comes from a place of people expect so much from him because he's so good. Because, one of the things was if he's a seventh place guy and you expect him to get seventh, fair enough, but that's not really the reputation he's forged or what he wants. So, any thoughts on Prado and some of those words?
Yeah, I think, I think he's got a lot of pressure on him, honestly, and I think he would probably disagree with that. But he moved heaven and earth to get this situation to where he wanted it. And to me, I think that ups the level of pressure, because if he doesn't do better, everyone's going to kind of be pointing a finger and saying, "Hey, man, you asked for this, so like you need to make it work." I'm sure he's really happy to be where he is, which is great. I don't blame him for wanting to be kind of on the bike and team of his choice. It clearly wasn't working where he was. That's pretty obvious. So in the end, he's the only one that can determine and decide whether this was the right choice or not. Like that's going to come down to him and his actions on the racetrack. I just kind of feel like it's a lot of pressure on him in this situation where maybe it wouldn't have been before. Certainly he took a big pay cut, but like if he's willing to live with all those things, then who am I to judge? Like he went through hell through the media and through the team and through, I'm sure, his own kind of mental anguish. So he's certainly suffering, I think, a lot more than anybody else. So I kind of come down on it like if he's good with making this decision and this is truly what he wanted and he's willing to pay the price financially, emotionally, all the above, who am I to judge? You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna kind of go along for the ride in that situation and assume that he knows what's best for him and let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how he shapes up at A1. Obviously, Supercross is all about sort of building, and it's probably unrealistic to him to be beating guys like Jett Lawrence, Tomac, Sexton, Webb off the bat. But yeah, pro motocross is where he'll really want to be fit and healthy and come into his own. And I guess you're looking into the season as well. Another piece of news: Barsha looks like he's broken his collarbone on that Ducati, mate. So it's pretty quiet on that front at the moment. But I'm sure they're putting in the hard yards to get that bike up to speed ahead of A1, I'd imagine, mate. Have you got anything on Ducati? And it's just an unfortunate setback, isn't it? Heading in for Barsha, he'll be wanting to really put his best foot forward again.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, it's collarbones aren't the biggest deal in the world, but it's at a the tough part is it's at a really critical time for testing and development of the bike. So whether or not there's a big letdown as far as his performance when we see him at Anaheim, I don't know. I just know that they could really use him out there spinning laps every single day and giving feedback. That to me is the toughest part of all of this. I don't think that like a collarbone injury is going to be the determining factor of the entire season, if that makes sense. I just think like you think about guys like Ziggy and these guys that they're truly like data geniuses. Like they can take data and manipulate it, build new parts, really make advances based off of the information given. And when you remove that, it's such a critical part of the equation that, Ferrandis will help. But I truly believe that one of the biggest advantages of hiring Justin Barcia was, yes, he's fantastic as a racer, but he has so much experience to draw from so many different teams and motorcycles. Now they're not going to have that, and or at least for a while anyway, at a really pivotal time as far as development goes.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal, and it'll be really interesting to see how that all looks come A1. And obviously, the Triumph 450, bit of a rough sort of off season for them as well, isn't it? Obviously, Smith being injured. You heard Lewis breaking news there that Wilson got a Triumph offer for that 450 seat. Is there any sort of word on what's going on there, mate? How's their 450 plans shaping up for 2026?
Well, yeah, I don't really know what, the Triumph thing is because Jordan Smith is hurt and he's been hurt for a while. I've heard that they've had some challenges developing the 450, which I mean that checks out, right? Like anybody who's raced competitively, raced a 250 and a 450 knows enough to tell you that they are wildly different as far as how they handle. And a 450 is simply much more difficult to make compliant and to make it do the things that you want to do. Like that is just a hard fact of motocross and supercross. 250s are nimble. They react much more slowly. You can get away with a lot more. So the window, I guess what I'm trying to say, the window of performance, especially for handling anyway, on a 450 is much narrower than a 250. So if you're off, if the chassis isn't perfect, if you're having some balance issues, which are very typical, they are going to be much more pronounced on a 450 versus they would on a 250. So to hear them struggling to get this 450 where they want it is not that surprising, even though, and that's in the face of, I think they had some really quick success with the 250. That's the difference. The chassis are just wildly different, even though they're similar. Adding the engine, the power, the different centrifugal forces, it changes the motorcycle so incredibly much. And I think that's just what they're dealing with.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And yeah, it's sort of you hear various things in the off season about, different programs and different riders and different teams. And obviously we get a little bit of a glimpse of some of these guys during, these preseason races, exhibition races. Have you heard much on what's going on from dudes like Sexton and Plessinger? Because obviously they've been a little bit quiet, had up and down seasons. Have you got anything going on from them? And just what are your expectations for them heading in? Do you fully expect Sexton to be challenging for the title on that Kawasaki?
So we get this opportunity in what is it, 2 weeks from now? Actually, a little less than 2 weeks. Well, no, today. I will be talking with Chase Sexton either yesterday or today. We're recording this on the 26th. We go to Anaheim Stadium, and it's called the Feld Media Days. Some of you, I'm sure, are super familiar with this process, but we get to sit down and talk with each of them for half an hour. And it'll be myself and Ricky Carmichael and Lee Diffie and Weege and Justin Brayton and AC and all the broadcasters you can think of. And I remember 2 years ago talking to Chase Sexton right when he got on the KTM, and he was fine, but I wouldn't say more than fine. I wouldn't say like he was elated. I wouldn't say he seemed relieved. I wouldn't say he was in a really good place with the bike. It was okay. Like just, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's like a 5, like Steve Mathis always says. I want to see where he's at with that this year. Because I kind of reference this a lot. I don't always think it's what they say because they are well trained to kind of say nothing. A lot of times it's how they say it, it's their body language, it's the enthusiasm in which with they say it. Those to me are the telltale signs. And that was I 2 times now, it's been really clear that those were reliable signals and indicators to go off of. 2 years ago with Sexton and last year with Jett and Hunter. They were absolutely the conclusion that not just myself. I'm not saying I'm some sort of, psychiatrist here, but everybody that was there was like with Jett and Hunter, like, man, they're not in a great place right now. Like they look like they're run down. They don't seem like they're thrilled with racing. The social media world is kind of had the pitchforks out. They're not in a great place. And that really showed up at Anaheim. The Sexton thing, I think the same thing is true. He didn't seem happy with the bike. I heard he had like a full-on meltdown right before the season going into the Anaheim one with the motorcycle, like changing everything. So point being, right now, I'm kind of open-minded as to how good or bad he will be. Like he's not going to be bad, but how good will he be? He's a fantastic rider. So can he be his best self and go win a one like he did last year? Or is he going to be starting slow, figuring things out, kind of like he did the first year on the KTM? I don't know, but I want to see if I can pick up anything from that conversation. So like I said, until then, I'm going to kind of just shrug my shoulders at the question and see how it goes and not, I don't want to, like it's been really tough for him to be comfortable on any motorcycle, it seemed, in the last 3 years. I'm going to try to keep that bias out of my head for the moment and allow it to kind of be a neutral approach until I talk to him. And then maybe good or bad, I will allow myself to kind of get entrenched with him. As for Plessinger, he had just started riding when I got to speak to him. That was 2 weeks ago. I talked to him in California. And so I think he has a lot of enthusiasm because he's actually able to ride again. And he took a ton of time off. He wasn't able to do much. So I think for him, this boot camp won't be as punishing. Like, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's a lot of work. You're going to be sore and all those things. But he's so excited to be back on a motorcycle and back into his program that I think maybe that carries into the beginning of the season. Because I'll tell you where I'm going with this. One of my tasks for the races is they'll basically say, hey, I need you to get some interviews for the pre-show with these riders. And anybody who's watched the races, you'll see this happen. In the pre-show, myself and Will Christian will be grabbing riders and doing interviews. Well, it's A1. So everybody's on pins and needles as far as nervousness. Some riders, I just know not to ask him. Like Sexton, if it's really far away from opening ceremonies, I'm talking like 15 minutes before opening ceremonies, maybe he would go for it. Anything closer to race time, I just know not to ask him. Not that he wants to like be mean about it. It's just he's locked in and he's now done with that portion of his day. He is a racer now. AP, completely different guy. Like I could go up to him 5 minutes before the main event, say, "Hey, you got a minute?" You're like, "Yep, no problem." Like he just doesn't, he does not fall, to any of the nervousness. Like that is not a liability for him at all. So I think given the excitement going into boot camp, given the excitement that he's going racing again because he didn't get to race the playoffs, he didn't get to finish motocross, and how relaxed he is at a race like Anaheim 1, I think he could be a surprise for being like a top three, top five guy. And I know that's not out of the realm of possibility for him any of the time. This is a guy that had the red plate in January of 2024, but I don't think many people will be talking about him at Anaheim 1 of 2026. And that, I think, is why it could be the surprise. Not body of work, just he doesn't have any momentum and nobody's going to be thinking about him. And I think he could come out and have a really good race because of that.
Yeah, that's really cool insight, and he's really refreshing sort of character for the sport in many ways, and it's pretty amazing how he can sort of switch it on and off like that under such a big stage, under the bright lights. And I guess with him, it's going to be a really interesting dynamic with the team. Obviously, Tomac, Prado, and Plessinger, three very different characters. I guess he might lighten things up and keep things fresh, and obviously he's seen a lot of teammates, and you hear various things about having Sexton as a teammate, what that was like to work with for some of these guys, and yeah, how do you think AP sort of helps with that as well? And obviously his experience is crucial in many areas as well. But it'll be pretty interesting to see how that plays out and if they sort of get along and how they're gelling, won't it?
Yeah, it will. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, just synergy within a team, but I don't know, like it's people are on a team, but it's not a team sport. So I don't know. I've been in every situation possible, and I think as long as you kind of are willing to kind of do your own thing, because some people want to be super like they want to go to dinners together and they want to train together, and other guys are just like, nah, man, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't want like we're cool. We're gonna be in the same truck all the time, but like there's a lot of separation there. So yeah, I think it'll be fine. It's just teammates are it's always a very unique dynamic between riders as far as who gels and who doesn't. Like, is it business? Can it be business and pleasure? So it kind of be I'll be curious as well to kind of see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, in these sort of racing environments, mate, there's like that team within a team vibe, I guess, and yeah, you never know how the cohesion's going to fare. So it'd be cool to see how that plays out. And we'll move on to the AusX Open and just the AusX series. Talk a little bit about that, mate. How is it from your perspective? I guess we'll start with the track. It looked pretty slippery and hard, like a lot of these dudes were saying, but it's a really big footprint, that stadium, and it was pretty close to an AMA sort of spec track, a lot of the dudes were saying. And you hear like Dino saying it was a hard and a slick track and you had to respect it or it could bite you. But maybe some pretty good racing. Obviously, it's a real showpiece, a celebration of the Lawrence brothers. And yeah, they had that cool moment with Webster as well, the Motocross the Nation celebrating their latest triumph there. And it's cool for the fans to sort of, in Australia, with, riding the crest of the wave with the Lawrence brothers and the sport being in such a good spot in many ways. So just your take on it, I guess, as a spectacle, an event, and all that off track stuff was pretty massive too, with Steve, AC, and JB doing a podcast. And yeah, they would have been dragged in many directions, the Lawrence brothers for sure, mate, but more of a less pressure, more fun environment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was cool. I think Adam Bailey and his team did a fantastic job, I think. And I got an opportunity to work with them last year at Wollongong and got to know the team a little bit. And I have a ton of respect for what Adam has put together there. And I think that was on full display from opening ceremonies to a lot of like the kind of back end like infrastructure stuff, like having Mathis there, having Brayton and AC there to do all of these things that make it truly an event and not just a random race on a Saturday. They had the Lawrence's like VIP experience. Like they Adam is willing to kind of take other ideas he sees around the world and implement them into AusX, which is cool. Like a lot of people, there's a lot of ego involved with a lot of people, and they'd be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like that's their thing. Why would I? He's like, no, that's awesome for the fans. That's awesome for people that want to be here. Why would I not take this amazing idea and use it here? Like I kind of love that, like he's using the same people. So like Steve, gets to benefit, AC and JB get to benefit, the Lawrences get to benefit, and Adam gets to benefit as he should. And most importantly, the fans get to benefit because they are willing participants of this. Like they want to have those experiences that they get to see from thousands of kilometers away, right? Like think about all the shows that not that like everybody wants to go to these, but like the live shows we do, a lot of people go to them. Well, if you're a big fan in Australia or New Zealand or Tasmania or wherever these people came from to watch the race, and you're like, I would love to do something like that. That seems really cool. Well, this was their chance with the same people at their home race. So I just thought that was a really cool thing. That Marvel Stadium is really impressive. Like the floor of that stadium is incredible. So they can do a lot of cool things. They can have a massive racetrack. They can have an awesome opening ceremonies and pyro show and all these things. And to be completely honest, it's probably as close to Monster Energy Supercross as you're going to get outside of the US. And I say that's a big compliment for me because you have races like Paris and you have, the WSX stuff going on. I think this is probably, AusX is about as close as you're going to get.
Yeah, it was a pretty impressive event for sure, mate. You summed it up really well there. All the hard work behind the scenes to make it a complete, show as well as a great, night of racing. And I guess Jett Lawrence, obviously cool for him to get the job done. Obviously Hunter did it last year, so I guess he showed his class like he usually does, mate. Obviously much better weekend than Paris that you were at the weekend before, mate. But it's cool to see him do some of those lines still like the quad he did. The lines look dialed. He said on a factory bike he might have been able to do a 5 there, which is pretty crazy. But there was not too much pressure on him. He seemed like he was having a lot of fun and just relishing the occasion. But you still get to see those little things that you see week in and week out by watching him race and working on the series that separates him. So yeah, just great for the Aussies to see him in person and just to see him riding is always a joy usually, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he is probably the biggest superstar to hit the sport. I would say since, man, I hate to not mention like the RBs and the Dungies and those guys, but I think Jett is simply a bigger star than those guys. I just think his age, the fact that he's a global superstar crossing continents, like he lived in Europe, he's from Australia, he's winning in America. I think the draw of that speaks volumes, and I just think he's kind of rewriting what it means to be a star in the sport right now, and the results are, of course, the biggest factor in that. But to have you when you watch him this weekend, like Paris to me was kind of a weird one. It was like a one-off. I don't know what was kind of going on with him. I saw flashes of him being his best self, but I don't know if it was the production bike. I don't know if it like he didn't ride a lot going into it. Maybe just had a bad weekend. I don't know. But this was closer to the Jett that I'm used to. It wasn't like peak Jett. Like I'll be honest with you, but if you're expecting anybody to be their peak self in November, then you're looking for the wrong thing. And if you are peaking in November, you are also doing the wrong thing. So it's not shocking to me that Jett is a little inconsistent and a little erratic 2 months from the season because he's not on race season form, that he's not supposed to be on race season form right now. So I think it was cool for the Australian fans to kind of get a taste of what Jett is capable of because a year ago he crashed and they didn't see him before then since 2019. So I think they got to see what Jett is capable of to an extent. And because even when I watched his Super Pole lap, it was okay. Like, don't get me wrong. Like saying Jett, it was okay. I'm talking on a curve, right? This is a relative term with Jett. If that was like, a mid-pack guy, I would say that's the best lap of their life. But I'm talking about Jett Lawrence. You have to always factor in who I'm considering and what he's capable of. But it still wasn't like anything what I've seen him do. It truly wasn't. Like I've seen that guy do things that left my jaw on the floor. I watched and I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's good. Like really low traction. You couldn't really push too much. He was being careful because if you push the front, you're going down. If you tried to get too aggressive on the throttle, the rear was gonna step. So he was minding all of those things. Um, but yeah, even in that context, for Aussie fans or whoever, fans from that region to get to see that in person and to see him kind of check out on everybody, I just think that's a cool experience that they probably don't get very often. And yeah, so I was excited for them to get to see what the rest of us get to see, 31 times a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. It's a great take on it. And it looks like they might not be doing some of these off-season events next year. So yeah, definitely take the chance to see him and they put on a show. And I guess Hunter, not obviously quite as good night for him, but he sort of rode smart, avoid the chaos, get through it. He had a bit of a rough start in the first one. And he was mentioning when you get stuck back in the pack at this sort of a level of racing, and some of those dudes are pretty unpredictable in what they're going to do, and you can't predict, how they're going to judge different sections. They got their own battles going on, mate. And yeah, so he said he just had to pick them off a bit more methodically rather than just surging through like he might otherwise. But yeah, had a pretty cool battle with Moss there, mate. So obviously a guy you've known, seen him race many times, and he's coming towards the end of his career, and that was pretty cool for the fans and those two races, especially, mate. So yeah, he just enjoyed it. Not so much pressure. The weight of expectations not there, so no need to push the envelope. And yeah, they were pretty adamant that they got straight back to Florida, and they're back refining the bike ahead of the A1, aren't they, mate? So they'll be locked in for sure. And yeah, busy next 6 weeks for them, won't it?
Yeah, it's it is an important time for them, and I think they'll probably take some days off here too before it gets too much into it because they just raced, two races in 3 weeks, so they got a lot of laps underneath their belt during that time. But speaking on Hunter, I've been harsh on Hunter in the past, and I've come around on that a lot. I definitely view Hunter in a very different way than I used to. Like he has absolutely surpassed every expectation I could have ever had for him. And I've been very public with that because I don't know that I've ever been so wrong on a rider before. Now, having said that, the difference is, and I still get grief from people because they want to kind of put Jett and Hunter in the same box. And a lot of times it's probably not far off. Like when you look at Motocross of Nations, you look at some of the nationals like Budds Creek, it's really hard for me to make a case that they weren't very similar on the day. Where I think that they differ is I think Jett has this kind of superhuman ability to do things that other riders can't, including Hunter. And what I mean by that, like when Hunter was battling Mossy, like he was kind of like trying to find a place to go around him, but was having to be patient. Mossy was kind of checkmating him in some spots where if that's Jett, and we kind of saw Jett do this, Jett can just lift the wheel going into the whoops and hit them so fast one lap that he'll just blow by him and end it all in one fell swoop, right? Hunter doesn't really have that superhuman gear to go to. Like he does his best work through being methodical, checking all the boxes, putting himself all the time in good situations outside of Australia's first start. But that was just because Jett cut over on him. But he always kind of puts himself in the best place for success. And then he is the master of execution. Jett also does those things very well. But when Jett needs to go to a place to kind of erase a mistake, think about like St. Louis, the start at St. Louis, and he came all the way back to fourth. He can do those types of things that other people can't do. And I think that is the real separation. If I had to define, hey, these guys, the results are so similar and they look like, all of these motocross rounds are finishing near each other. What's the difference? Like, why do you gauge them differently? It's because when push comes to shove in an emergency situation, I think Jett simply can do things that not just Hunter, but basically nobody else can do. And that to me is a big feather in his cap. And I think in championship situations, when things are going really wrong, he can erase a lot of damage that other riders wouldn't be able to erase. And he could turn like a first turn crash that would be like a ninth for most riders into like a third or a fourth. And when you game that out over a championship, that's a big difference to have your bad night be a third or a fourth versus a ninth. And to me, so um, like talking about Hunter, I just think that we saw that on display. I got into that long diatribe about Jett, but it's really about Hunter battling Mossy. You kind of see him. He's a human, right? Like he is a fantastic racer, but he's got to do it his own way. Where I think his little brother, is a little bit more. He just has more levers to pull, if that makes sense. Like when push comes to shove, he has more options and more tools in his tool belt to draw from, where Hunter kind of has to stick to his game plan. And that to me is the key difference. But you also have to factor in that Hunter was coming off that crash in Bercy, and I think he's just trying to get out of there safe and do all those things too. But I just wanted to mention that because it struck me. I've been trying to like Am I way wrong on Hunter? Like, is he going to go win the Supercross title? Is he kind of closed the gap to Jett yet? And I think watching Australia, I was like, no, there's just still a little, there's a difference there. Like Jett can do things that Hunter simply can't do. Most of the time, they're very close, but Jett just still has this a little bit. To me, it's just a talent. It's a talent edge that he can't always wield it, but sometimes when he really needs it, he has it.
Yeah, that's a great analysis of that sort of weapon in his arsenal, and that, scope for damage limitation will definitely continue to serve him well, just like it has so many times in the past. And obviously between them on the podium was Dean Wilson, another really excellent ride by him, put himself in an even more commanding position to win the title, extended the lead. So I guess, yeah, first main took advantage of, like you said, Hunter being buried, and he's just happy racing, isn't he? He loves getting these bonuses on the cards. He'll look to get the title bonus and keep the World Tour going, mate. So I guess we all fully expect him to secure the title this weekend in Adelaide, mate, which is a bit of a shame in some ways that it's on the same weekend as World Supercross, because a lot of these riders kind of miss an opportunity to wildcard in WSX, mate. So it's just a, tough scheduling thing there, especially for the Aussie fans. If you wanted to go to both, would have been cool. But yeah, just not happening. But yeah, just your take on Dean and just the scheduling as well.
Yeah, I mean, for Dean, it's been the longest swan song ever as far as him going, kind of riding off into the sunset, but not so different than like Justin Brayton, like for all intents and purposes, Dean Wilson's effectiveness in Monster Energy Supercross has come to a close. And I think he would be one of the first ones to tell you that. Will he race? Probably, because he likes to make money. Like Dean is one of those guys that we talk about on this show. There are different types of guys. Some guys are doing it because the competition and they love it and this is what they do. Other guys, those things can still be true, but the money is a big factor. And I think Dean falls into the latter of those two. So he's making a ton of money racing this Australia Supercross series. He will make good money to race Monster Energy Supercross as well. I think in 2026, I think he was offered the Triumph deal apparently on the to race the 450, which I think he declined. But I think for Dean, he is a very good Supercross rider, and it's misleading because if you watch him race Anaheim and he gets 11th, you're going to be like, he's not that good. But it's not fair because he's racing against Tomac and Roczen and Webb and Jett and Hunter and Plessinger and Sexton and just go just keep naming them. Like that's who he's got to battle with. He goes to Australia and he's okay. He lost to Savachi last year, but he's got to battle like Clout and Matt Moss, and like these are really good riders, but the level is a completely different conversation. You couple that with Dean's biggest strength of his entire repertoire of skills is blitzing whoops. Like that is what he does the best above all else. His starts are not very good. His turns are okay. Um, it's the whoops. And when we've had races in Australia with big whoops, he dominates simply because of that. You can just watch him. He'll maintain, I would say Clout's definitely a better starter. You could even say Clout's better in the corners, but Dean will absolutely annihilate him in the whoops, and he will steer his entire race around that. He'll try to get the best start he can. He will kind of just stay with Clout in the other sections, and then he will absolutely use it as a weapon and employ his skills in the whoops to make sure that no one else can touch him. And he's been doing this for years now. So when I kind of take a step back and say, how's he doing this and will this continue? I don't see a reason why it wouldn't. And Justin Brayton was the same way. Brayton even had more because he was such a great starter. So he was always up at the front. But Brayton was and is a fantastic whoops rider. And when you have a skill like that and it's head and shoulders better than everybody else you're up against, it's really hard for the other guys to do anything about it.
Yeah, he's certainly a class act, mate. That's a great description there for sure. And just a couple more words on AusX. Obviously, Clout, you saw that huge loop out crash, really bizarre
Yeah.
incident off the start there, mate, which is, you saw him in Paris. He almost took home the prince there. But yeah, raw speed is always there in the time sessions. Just couldn't obviously replicate it this weekend. And obviously, Lux Turner as well, getting that wrist injury, mate. Really sad for him. Obviously, with that Bar X team would have been aiming to race A1, mate. So that won't be happening, I'd imagine, mate. But yeah, the sport's brutal. He was riding the crest of the wave and going to win that title for sure. And, then it all just comes crashing down, doesn't it, mate? And Cole Thompson obviously ended up getting the win, and that leaves it down to Kingsford and Larwood for the title. So just anything you want to touch on there?
Yeah, I mean it's a huge bummer for Lux Turner. Like he was really kind of coming around. He'll be fine. He's really young, but that's a pretty big setback. So I guess that would probably push him to the East Coast, which maybe it'll be fine. Like if he's, let's say it's an 8 week injury that puts him into January, leaves him about not enough time to really be 100%. But these things happen. It happens to everybody at some point. You mentioned Clout there. Clout has a lot of talent, and I think he's kind of come into his own. Like he's matured now. He's an adult. He's found, I think, his kind of place. And if he sticks around, he's going to make a lot of money in Australia, and he's going to win a lot. It's just unfortunate that guys like Yariv, it's not unfortunate. It's just the way racing goes. Yariv is able to go recruit, whether it's Americans or, Dino's not even American. I guess he kind of is, but these talents from Monster Energy Supercross that come down, and he has to compete against them. Like that's just the way of the world. But like from watching Clout in his early days when he came over to America to now, he's really developed, and that doesn't always happen. Not every rider who shows promise or potential cultivates it and continues to hone their craft and becomes, one of their country's best racers. Like that is what Clout has done, and he deserves a ton of credit for it because when I watch him race, he looks the part. Like he has all the pieces together. And yeah, I don't know what went on with the start. Either the starting device let go, or he had a clutch malfunction, or both. But yeah, that that was a wild ride, and I'm sure it caught him by surprise as much as anybody else, and that's why it happened. If I had to guess, I would say he had some sort of clutch malfunction there, where he tried to engage in and it either let go on him all at once, because to lose control in that manner, something very, very unexpected happened. Like, right, these guys are surgeons with their motorcycle, and what they, clutched engagement and precision and all those things. So that definitely caught him out. I don't know if he commented anywhere about what went on, but to me, it was all the telltale signs of a clutch problem.
Yeah, it was certainly a strange situation for sure, mate. And that's been a really quality podcast, that one, mate. And before we wrap up, any final thoughts? There's obviously lots going on still. There's the Minios racing, there's some MXGP news still filtering through, like the Matty and Honda collaboration for MX2 there. Anything going on with Fly and yourself you want to touch on too, mate? But yeah, it's sort of all eyes will be on AusX and WSX weekend again, won't it?
Yeah, I think it's quiet. Like Minios is going on. That's a huge deal. MXGP still has a lot of news to drop. The Geiser news and the Hurlings news, and there's a ton still that's going to come out, which it's kind of the worst kept secret in the world, but all that stuff will drop. But yeah, I think for me, all eyes are on Australia, which is cool. I think for the entire a kind of Supercross, MXGP, SMX world to be watching Australia and two events at the same time, that's a pretty cool moment, I think, for the sport in Australia as a whole.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see. Obviously, look forward to watching WSX myself this weekend. So, yeah, looking forward to it, mate. And we'll probably catch up next week to chat all about it. And, yeah, thanks again for joining us on this one, mate. Lots of excellent insight as usual. And a massive shout out to the fans for listening and supporting the website and the podcast. Hugely appreciated. And lastly, a big shout out to Fly Racing and Firepower for all their support sponsoring this podcast. So be sure to go and check out all they have to offer online and on socials. All right, thanks again, JT. All the best for the weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
Sounds good. Enjoy yourself. You're actually going to the race for once.
Yeah, mate. It's not too often I get down there, but no, it should be awesome. I've picked a good one, I think.
Yep. Have fun, man.
No worries, we'll do. Have a good one.